You have one partner in your business you didn't pick, and that's the government. You can like them or not like them, but they're part of your business, and you might as well learn how to play by the rules that they have set up. Kristi Kendall and I are going to talk about how the government can be a resource for you, not just a pain in the asset. See what I did there? I thought that was really funny. Anyways, join us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast as we talk about the government as it relates to you in business, how it can be to your advantage if you use it right, and an absolute game killer if you ignore it or play it wrong. Join us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. I'm Erik Stenbakken, been an investor since 2010, long-term, short-term rentals, and joining me today is co-host Kristi Kendall. Kristi, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. I'm Kristi Kendall. I'm a real estate developer, consultant, and I teach locals how to do real estate development in their own backyard. And I am fired up. We've got a good topic today.
We do. We were talking about how we should title this, and I just come up with what I thought was a hilarious pun. The government gatekeeper, partner, or pain in the asset. I don't know. Come on, give it to me. That's a little bit funny.
I mean, when I read that, I was like, yes, that is completely perfect.
Right. And so I promise you a dad joke here. Whether it's a dad joke, it's an Ole and Lars joke. See, I've got a Norwegian last name. It's right here, the Stenbakken. And my dad was relentless in telling the Ole and Lars joke. So here goes. Ole and Lars get a job in the forestry department. And they're issued chainsaws and they're sent out to do their work. Well, after a couple of days, their supervisor calls them in and says, "You morons, what are you doing? I mean, everybody else is cutting down 30, 40 trees in a day, and you guys have topped out at 3. And that was like the second day. And now you're down to 1. And the guy goes, "Oh, but the work is just so hard." And the supervisor says, "What is wrong with you guys? Give me your chainsaw." And he pulls the chain, and Ole goes, "What is that? A terrible noise." Okay. That's
You're right, but great dad joke.
Okay, here's the point though. If you have the tools and you don't know how to use them, and you see everybody else making this incredible progress, you think, that's not fair. How come they're doing so much better than me? They must have some kind of secret weapon. Yes, they do, and they know how to use it. And that is the government. Now, that's the topic that everybody loves to hate, blah, blah, blah. We can go into that stuff. But here's the deal. Yeah, whatever it is, but here's the deal. The government exists. They're there. And if you are in business, and if you are a real estate investor in business, the government is there as Kristi said in our outline here, basically a silent partner. They're sitting at the table in one way or another, no matter what asset class you are in. So, like Ole and Lars, you might as well learn how to use it wisely, because that is all the difference. I mean, that is essentially the difference between real estate investing successfully and running another business. Is if you don't know how to use the government, especially tax code, you're missing the power.
Right? You're pushing a boulder up the hill at that point when you could actually be pushing it downhill if you knew how to leverage it properly.
That is exactly right. I read Richard Kiyosaki's Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. A friend recommended it to me, and I thought, that sounds, the title just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, right? I'm like, I don't know, it just seems kind of wrong. But then I realized, wait a minute, if these are the rules of the game that we're playing, I'm getting on a field. I don't care if it's a baseball field, football field, whatever. If I get on the field to play and I am in willful ignorance of the rules of the game, it's not the game that's stupid, it's me. Okay, so we are going to dive into government gatekeeper, partner, or pain in the asset, and we're going to take a look at how it works. Kristi, you've done a lot of development, and I'm going to guess that at first people think, the first thing you've got to do is a spreadsheet and think about how to organize all the things, and that must be the hardest part. I'm guessing that's some work, but the variable that you've got in there is probably your local governments. So talk to us about the one thing that we're all little bit afraid of red tape.
Yeah, one of the most common things when I work with other developers and I'm helping with them on their project, they go, I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to get the answers. The city hates me. I'm scared of them. They don't want my project. So how do I find a way to just push it through and be done with that part? And that's the extent of where most of them get, and they get frustrated because they don't understand why they can't do what they want to do. Like maybe they go buy a building and they want to use it for a certain purpose. And then when they go into the city says, you can't actually do that use in that building. And now they're frustrated because they've bought it and they can't do what they want to do. And now they feel very adversarial with the local city. So a lot of what I do, both in my own developments and consulting and a mentorship, is helping people do that initial due diligence early to figure out, before they buy the property, what can you do with it? Because the city actually has, they have the roadmap there. Most people don't know that it's there. And there's ordinances that have the master planning, and they show, here's what we currently allow in our community. And actually, here's our future land plan. So like, here's what we want to do in the future. So they're literally giving you the roadmap to go, oh, like, I want to do this. I see where they want us to build maybe this industrial flex space, and cool, I'm going to go do that. And if you do what they're incentivizing you to do, they actually do open the doors and help you along. Same way with affordable housing. If you're doing what the local government wants for that community, and that comes from us voting in our city council or our county commissioners. And so they take what they hear from us and they create that plan. And when we do that, then they might be able to either fast track permits, or maybe they find grants and other incentives to help the deal go forward. So there's plenty of ways to do it. And it's just making sure that you're aligned with what the city is looking to do. Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Kristi Kendall, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. And now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer podcast on all platforms.
Yep. So we're going to break this podcast down into basically 3 parts: the bad, the good, and the ugly. That really ugly. If you don't pay attention and you're just like, whatever, I'm gonna okay, we'll take it down. So part of the bad here is it could be red tape hell, right? I mean, you've got to get this permit, and then Jones over there, Jones has to do the stamp before Sally is going to look at that and move it on to the next thing. And so we get frustrated with this. But think about it this way: that master plan that you're talking about, if you're not familiar with what that is in your community, think of it as the forecast. Okay. If you're going to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to go out and have a picnic. Well, you know what you should do first is check the weather. Are you going to be having hailstorms later in the afternoon? I live here in Colorado, right? So by mid-afternoon in the summertime, that is a pretty high chance you're going to get a thunderstorm, right? And so if you decide you're going to go out on a picnic, or worse, you're going to go out on a stand-up paddleboard in the middle of a lake, and you're like, this will be fun, but you don't know that you're going to get downbursts that are going to be 50-mile-an-hour winds, you're headed for trouble, right? But the even worse part is that you could have known that. Right. And so that's where these master plans are, is they're telling you, look, this is the way the wind is blowing. You can either have it in your face the whole time, or you can have it at your back. And it's not a mystery. Here's what Kristi's saying, is that you can find this stuff out. I mean, because this goes to, and this is really core, don't let this go by, is that the local government or the federal government, whatever, it doesn't matter, anywhere in between, has a plan. They have a direction they want to go. Now, yes, that can change, but you can also find out what that is, right? So if you, so to speak, use this metaphor, check the weather forecast, and you find out that your community is absolutely, they've had it with, let's say ADUs. I'm just making this up, okay? If they've just said, that's it, we are cracking down on this, and you look up the city council minutes, which you can do, it's public record, and you find out that there has been deliberation for or against, here in Colorado, just went for ADUs, then you know which way the weather is blowing. It's like, oh, we're going to get ADUs in here. Oh, the state is going to move to remove local restrictions on ADUs. The state is going to encourage ADUs. The state has a fund to help move ADUs ahead. They've got a set of pre-approved plans that you can do. Guess what? If you look into that and you do your research, all of a sudden somebody else has done the research for you. They've already kind of plowed the road through zoning. They've already given you plans. You might not even have to hire an architect. Just find a builder who's willing to build one of the plans. My point is this, that the government has things they want to do. If you find out what those things are and you decide to do or support those things, you are going to have a tailwind. That's what we're talking about here.
And even, I was going to say, even if you do and follow all the rules and you say, I looked at the playbook, I followed the rules, I did the thing, there can still be road bumps or things that come up. And Erik, I think you have a really good story
I do.
about this that one of the ways that it can go sideways when the government decides to change their mind, and that's why we get frustrated, is when the rules change halfway through the game.
Yeah. Well, that happened to me in Maui. I was looking to do a 1031, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's a tax play that you can do. And if you're a real estate investor, you should know about this, right? It's a tool in your toolbox, whether you know how to use it or not. It's there and it's very powerful. But anyways, I decided to do a 1031 from a place in Colorado into a place in Maui. Visited Maui for over 20 years. I lived in Hawaii in the 80s. And so that felt like the right move for us to do. And the governor had literally said, we're not going to take away the rights of short-term rental owners to use their properties as short-term rentals. This was after the fires in Lahaina. And they had asked short-term rental owners to open their properties to survivors of the fires who had lost their homes. And they did, right? Vacation rental owners did open their properties up and allowed long-term leases, like 2-year leases from FEMA and so on. And the governor gets on TV and says, oh, thank you. You all have stepped up. We are not going to take away your right. Well, 4 days after we closed on our condo, the mayor of Maui did a press release saying, we are going to take away the rights of you who have had over 45 years of vested property rights. We're going to take it away. We're going to remove 33% of all tourist housing in Maui. That's another whole thing. Don't get me started on that. But the local municipality there has got this bee in their bonnet, burr in their saddle, whatever you want to use, to just get rid of it. There's all kinds of cultural reasons, historical reasons, prejudice, frankly. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But yeah, it is headed to the city council right now. The cost to the local economy is basically, think of it like, hey, I've got a spider here on my temple. I think I'm going to shoot it. Well, you could. But that's kind of what they're doing economically. But there's so much bias and prejudice and pent up anger. And some of it has origins. Now, I'm going to say this, that there are some origins to this, to where people felt disempowered. And as they get government representatives who are going to revenge for them, then things start rolling this way, right? Okay, so the story isn't done yet. We'll see. I hope cooler, saner heads prevail and we can find a solution, because as you might guess, housing in Hawaii is expensive. Straight up. Doesn't matter whether it's a condo, an apartment, a single family home, it's expensive everywhere. They're not alone, right? This happens, and you should know this. This happens all over the country. This happens in Boise. This is happening in almost all the mountain communities here in Colorado. We've got communities here where the millionaires are being pushed out by the billionaires. People say, oh, Wyoming, that must be quaint. There are places in Wyoming that have, $10, $50 million homes that are occupied 1 week a year. And don't think that people don't notice that, right? And so the local government is always moving a little bit here to try to say, okay, what do my voters want to have happen? And if you are unaware of that, this is the warning here. If you are unaware of that and you check the weather forecast and it says 80% chance of hail and lightning at 2 p.m. and you're like, screw that, I want to do a picnic anyways. Well, you can, but know that the weather is probably going to suck, whether you believe it or not. So, Kristi, I know you've had some zoning situations happen for you too.
Yeah, I mean, to your point with STRs across the country, there's been, even in communities where they were in place. I mean, we had a similar example in South Lake Tahoe where a couple of people in the community decided they were going to petition to ban short-term rentals and really restrict it to a very small core area. They were able to get it to pass, and as a result, it took hundreds of short-term rentals offline that have not converted into long-term rentals. And it was just and it was a massive, it was, hey, we need to fix the affordable housing crisis. Let's blame it on the short-term rentals, which there's a little bit to that, but there's outside of a full ban, there's other ways to approach it. So when you see the extreme and you see that, wait, I've owned this for 5 or 7 years, and now my livelihood and how I bought it, like I did everything right, and now I'm being penalized. Same way with HOAs, actually, in my community. That's why I ended up running for county commissioner after waking my community up, and just, I didn't care if they voted to keep short-term rentals or not. I just cared that they knew that it was happening and that their property values, even if they were long-term renters, that their property values were going to be negatively impacted potentially. So I wanted to just make sure everyone was alert and aware and understood that 10 people controlling a 330 unit community were trying to pass something under the radar. And I think that's the bigger point, is that if you own and invest, you are running a business. You should be paying attention to what is happening in your community, whether it's following along with the chamber and with your local government. Pay attention, because your business, to survive and thrive and to run well, you need to know what's happening in the local government. And so as much as people want to maybe think of real estate investing different, it is a business, and the more aware you are, the more that you can better prepare yourself. And maybe you do need to galvanize your community to come forward and make sure that the county commissioners or the city council, that they're not just hearing the voices of the few, but that they're hearing the voices of everyone.
Yeah. So if this starts to sound a little bit like politics, unfortunately, yes.
It is.
It is. Yeah, this is the local government, and by local, we're scaling down from federal here, because it's a lot tougher to make that one-on-one impact with the federal government. But locally, you can influence this.
Yeah, so I was a planning commissioner for 2 years, and I can tell you firsthand, in a community of 40,000 people, if people came up and spoke, we were completely approachable, as were our county commissioners. So if you do want to have your voice heard and do want to get involved, not only can it be heard, but it will make a difference.
Yeah, speak up, and be articulate, have reasons.
Yes.
And be kind, because these people who stepped up to do this, they're not becoming multimillionaires, at least not if they're doing it fairly, by doing this civil government work. Okay. So show some respect as you go through this. So as we go through some of the red tape, there could be moving targets of what's coming in laws. Property taxes are a thing. Mm-hmm. You cannot like them, but you had better math it in. So there's a market where I've watched, it's in Nebraska, where it's like, oh, wow, the purchase prices are really good relative to the rent. And you think, wow, that just would, duh. No, why wouldn't you do that? Well, you have to factor in the property tax, because Nebraska's property tax is no joke. It is way up there. Now, to their credit, they put it to good use, and their school systems consistently rank very, very, very highly nationally. But they've still got high property tax. So, I mean, you may like it or you may not like it, but you need to math that in, because your local municipalities and the uses change. Now, I don't want to make it sound like the government can and does always yank the zoning and use out from under you. It's a hard thing to do. There's government taking, and that's a constitutional issue. That's where they actually take your property. Hey, we're going to put a highway right through
Eminent domain, right, right.
Yep, right. And that's called regulatory taking, where they actually take it away from you. And there you have some constitutional rights there. And then there's the regulatory taking, which is when they pass a new law that takes away your right to use a property. That's what I'm facing in Maui. And that also is a constitutional issue, but it's a slightly different animal. Anyways, do your homework, because the government I'll use this other metaphor, they're making a game. Okay. And if you remember as a kid, or if you've watched kids when they get together and they're making a game up, they're like, okay, you can do this, but you can only run to there. Okay, but you have to touch the tree first. Whatever those rules are, our local governments, like it or not, are very much like that. We've made the rules. Okay, so the boundaries are here, and you've got to go touch this tree first. And that is, you've got to take your plans to Jones and see if that even passes muster the first time. And then you've got to go touch the rock. And then you've got to go touch the slide. It's the same thing, folks. And if you ignore that and you think, no, I'm going to just cowboy this my own way, trouble. Now let's flip that, because if you know how the rules work and you are intentional about using them and having the wind at your back, you can have massive advantage. You can essentially start the chainsaw and get a whole lot more done than if you just ignored it. Kristi, you've done a lot of work with locals.
Yeah, I was going to say, to the point on property taxes and doing smarter, one of the things that I would recommend to everyone when you're dealing with the government is always dig to the root question of why. You have this regulation, why? And keep asking questions and keep pushing it through, because what we found, say it's permitting. If we ask why this is here, then we go, oh, because you actually wanted to solve this problem back here. Okay, if you wanted to solve that problem, but you think this is the mechanism, and I show you this is the mechanism, then we can prove that we're achieving the same goal, but we did it in a way that wasn't detrimental to the project. The same way with property taxes. The way they calculate property taxes can be, and the way they issue it is, sometimes you can push back and you can actually knock those down. So in Columbus, the schools get most of the property taxes that come in. So immediately, as soon as someone buys a property, they put in a petition and they say, raise the rates. And so then they'll come back, and sometimes they will come back at a valuation that is higher than what you actually paid for the property. And if you push back and you say, nope, I only paid this for it, you don't get to charge me based on the assumed equity of what maybe it could be, then you actually can win and you can get your property bill pushed down. So know that you can, know that you can ask questions and know that you can push back, and that everything in life is negotiable, literally everything.
Yes. And like you're saying, when you negotiate, if you sit down across the table to negotiate with somebody, yelling, pounding the table, calling names, it does not work, right? When it comes to petitioning your taxes and so on, which I just did again this year, I did it before. And they came up with a wildly optimistic valuation of the property. And I said, and I actually called.
I would love if it were that much.
Me too. I said, if you've got a buyer in mind who's willing to pay this, please send them my way. I would gladly release the property for what y'all. And this is the deal too, is it's robots, right? Unless it's some kind of huge commercial property and they set it individually. If it's a single family home, chances are they're using something equivalent to Zillow to just take a look at that and go like, yeah, I don't know, it's a 3-2. The other 3-2s that are around are probably worth that much. So bam, and they just slap that on there. And they might not know that your foundation is gone and you've had to rebuild the floors because of termites and your house isn't worth that much, right? So other good things is that if you work with your local government, it's a local government. Like you can actually go to lunch with these people. You can actually go down and set an appointment and go to their office and sit in there. You can go to city council meetings. And I just finished photographing the city council at a local municipality. It was right before a city council meeting. And guess who was first in line to present? It was a building group. Now, what were they proposing? I don't know. I think it was a large multifamily pitch that they were doing. And they were going to pitch, here's what we think it will do for the community. Here's how it will work. They're basically making they were making a PowerPoint presentation this is the good we think it will do for the community. Here's how it's going to do. What questions do you have for us? And if you want to do something, go to a meeting. They're public. You can sit in there and you can see how people do this. I had to apply for a variance once. I didn't have to. I said I chose to. And I went to another municipality and I presented my case. And mine got passed, but there was somebody else making a case and they hadn't done their homework really, didn't get the temperature of the community, and they were shot down in flames because they didn't get the temperature of the community. I mean, the community should literally, the back row was filled up with retirees and the city council is sitting there looking at them. There's twice as many citizens sitting there as there are people on the council, maybe 5 times more, and one person presenting for this case and about 30 or 40 against it. Well, who do you think had their day that day? Well, the community went out feeling satisfied, and that person with their proposal was shot down in flames. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes. So, you can do some homework on this. You can do some work. Oh, safety standards. Let's talk about that. That's a local government thing. And I have a story, Kristi, between when we decided to do this as a topic and right now. I have a story, and it is a text that you don't want to get as a vacation rental owner or any owner. There was a fire at the property. Yeah. I'm sitting over at somebody's house. We just had lunch and there's a fire. Yeah. I was like, oh, details? Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out somebody hadn't cleaned the grease trap in the barbecue. Now, this barbecue is on a wooden deck next to a wooden wall in the house with another wooden deck over it. Now, the other deck over it is probably, it's probably 10 foot, right? We got good tall ceilings. And we have safety inspections every year that we have to pass. Yep. Now, it sounds like BS and it sounds like a lot of money, but I have always believed in going overboard when it comes to fire extinguishers. By code, we have to have one per floor. By my standards, there should be one right next to the barbecue unit and one in the kitchen. Well, guess what? They saw the fire extinguisher right next to the barbecue unit, and the extent of my damage is wiping the stuff off of the barbecue grill, the fire extinguisher stuff. That's it. That's the extent of my problem. But there are other things when it comes to safety standards and whatnot like this that local governments have. It's like, hey, I want to take this unused office building and turn it into apartments, which is what you hear the uninitiated say. The initiated are like, oh my goodness, could it be done? Yes. At multiples of 5, 10, 50, what the building itself costs. Okay, this is not an undertaking for beginners. And there are going to be so many codes and standards. And some of those you may feel are baloney. I'm not going to argue. But some of those have really good origins.
Well,
and
so
you can like it or not like it, but there they are.
Yeah, and even on the how you build and getting into inspections, we were just having a conversation this weekend about it. There was a builder from Maui who actually builds trying to be affordable tiny homes, but he was talking about how the turnover, we were saying, okay, we've got the older generation leaving as our building officials and our inspectors. We have the younger people coming in. And part of that is I'm already finding we're educating the city staff, whether it's planning, buildings, whoever it is, we're already educating them on how their city code is and how to really do their jobs and how it all kind of works and ties together. And how that relates in the field is there are 10 ways to build a wall. And if your plans call for one way, and this happened in the past, if your plans called for one way, but the actual framers did it a certain way. But it was still, hey, yep, that works. I've been in the industry a long time. We know that that's one of the approved building standards. Go ahead and have your architect draw up the detail that you built, and then we'll go ahead and stamp it. Well, what we're finding is that with the inspectors who are a little more fresh and first getting into their job, they don't know those extra nuances. And so they're just flat out saying, nope, you got to rebuild the entire wall. No other options. So to that extent, then you open a whole other can of worms and things. And something else that can happen during inspections is that they could come out to inspect something, and then when they come back the next time, they might find something brand new that they could have addressed the first time. And until that permit is closed and until it is final, they can come up with whatever things they want. So that's where it behooves you to try and go through every single detail when they're out and try and resolve it as quickly as possible and leave no open items. But maybe some advice for when you're working with inspectors, if you do run into that, say you're flipping houses and you've got the permits and you run into these inspectors, you can always take what the inspector says, and if you're starting to hit a brick wall and going, I don't know if this will work, you can go back to the permitting department and say, hey, the field inspector said this. I worked with my architect. They said, yes, it's not built to plan, but here it is an industry standard. They're willing to stamp it. Can we just give you the sheets to do that? So you're not overriding the inspector. You're just going back to the people who approved the original plans, who understand the different building code mechanisms, and that, they go, you can switch it out for something that's equivalent or better, as long as it meets code. So just some nuances to just keep questioning, always ask why, and try and find solutions in working with your design team and the cities.
Yep. Yeah. Inspectors are part of your team when you're doing any kind of building, whether you like it or not. And the more of a team player you can be, the better your project will work. Just flat out, whether you like it or not, those are the rules of that game, and you need to do it. So we're going to talk briefly, super briefly, about some of the tax tools where the government is your partner. We are not CPAs. We are not lawyers. We are not giving you financial or tax advice. Seriously, we got to preface this with this. But research this, right? We're just saying these things exist, and they are incredibly powerful tools. And if you ignore them, you are simply saying, I'm going to cut down those trees, but I'm not going to power up that saw. Okay, go for it. But here are some super powerful tools. Depreciation, which is, do your research in it. This is where the government says basically, oh, you bought a home. That's so sad for you because it probably becomes worth less every year. It's probably just going to, in 27 and a half years, probably just be worth almost nothing. So we'll let you deduct some of the value of the income you get from what we think is the loss. Now, this may at first sound nuts to you. And in many ways, in a practical sense, it is nuts. But as Kristi mentioned before, what's behind it? Well, what's behind it is the government has discovered here in the United States that it is a lot more affordable and a lot less red tape for the government to have individuals provide housing for the American population than for that to be the job and responsibility and cost of the government. And so what they're doing is they are incentivizing people through the tax code to do for other citizens what the government doesn't want to do themselves. Look, I lived in New York City when we had the projects, and I've been through the Bronx in the 1970s. It is not a Disney set, okay? It is not a panacea. It's like, oh, government housing, wouldn't that be wonderful for the government to provide? Nope. Just get on YouTube or wherever and look up government housing, 1970s, New York City. Go all over. I don't care if it's LA, whatever.
Yep.
It's not pretty, okay?
Mm-mm.
And the government's figured this out, and they've said, okay, so we'll incentivize people through capitalism, again, like it or don't like it, but those are the rules, to provide housing. And if you provide super crappy housing, guess what? The customers will go somewhere else because they can, and you're not going to have tenants. And so you need to fix your house up. And so in response, the government's like, oh, really? So you fixed that house up? All right, well, we'll call that a deduction, and we'll let you offset some of the gains that you would have had. And we can do that through depreciation or an accelerated version of that called cost segregation or accelerated depreciation. So those are some of the ways the government incentivizes this. And when it comes to keeping the ball moving, it's like, okay, yeah, you did that on one house, fine, it went up in value, and now you decide to sell it. Well, we could tax you on all of those gains, but if you're going to sell that one and take that money and we can get you to fix up two, now we've got two more houses in the marketplace. So tell you what we'll do, we will defer those taxes. Not that you're never going to pay them. We will defer the taxes. And so we'll let you take the profit from this one and move it over to another like kind asset. That's a whole thing you got to look into. Took an 8-hour course on that because I'm licensed broker associate, and that's one of the things I chose to do. Is you get somebody who knows what they're doing with a 1031 exchange, and lots of options for that, more than most people think. It lets you reinvest that gain, that tax that you would have had to pay, into another property. Again, it goes back to why would the government do this is because you're providing more and better housing. Also, when you do that and you're selling this one and you're moving it into 2 or 3 other assets or a much bigger asset, which part of the deal, if you move it into a smaller asset, you do pay taxes. So you're hiring more people. You've got more municipalities who are collecting more property tax at a higher value, and you're hiring more contractors, and you're housing more people. And the government's like, oh, we like how this is going. Keep it up. And so that's one of the reasons 1031 exchanges exist, is because it keeps the market moving. And I just saw this the other day. It's like, if you ever wondered if the housing industry moves the economy, just set your time back to 2008, hop onto any news program and look how the economy's doing. And what was the one driver of that? It was real estate. So tell us about tax credits and opportunity zones. I've looked at those. They come and go, and they can be local, but they are incentives to do what we've talked about. Is the government says the wind is blowing this way. This is how we want to develop this part of town or whatever. And we want partners in this. Yep. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's so the government has different grants and incentives that they will give out, whether it's with the historic tax credits. What they're trying to do from that is they want to preserve their community and what makes them unique. They want to preserve the older buildings, want to preserve the facade and the feel of the history of the community. So they know by requiring that it's going to cost more. So there's a way that they can come in and give you tax credits, so that way you can afford to do the project and preserve the community and create an asset for it. I know there's a project up in Michigan where there's a older building that had commercial on the first floor and apartments above, and it's a couple of developers have come in and tried to do something. Well, the current developer on it, he was able to work out a whole variety of capital stack and different incentives to make this work, but the historic tax credits are essentially going to, he was able to get grants. They're coming in and they're completely redoing the exterior facade, replacing all the windows and doing a new roof, as well as gutting the entire inside of the building. Okay, that is huge from a risk and a dollar standpoint, and it's a way that the government wants to work in partnership with you to get you what you want and need. Opportunity zones are another one. I think those are phasing out a little bit more, but the idea behind it was that they wanted to incentivize people, and it was similar to a 1031 concept, to where if you invested your dollars from another project into the opportunity zone, that you could, and now you did have to spend double, but you had to put in a certain amount and there were rules, but that it would essentially be deferring your capital gains. And if you left it in there long enough, then it would eventually wipe them away. And that was their way of trying to take some areas that were more run down that they wanted to revitalize again, to try and create that mechanism. So not all programs that the government creates truly fixes the problem, but they do have those out there. And there's all sorts of other programs, like there's brownfield grants. If there's an old factory that maybe contaminated the soil or the ground, they know it's going to be expensive to transform that into a new space. So there's different brownfield tax credits and grants that you can do and you can work with. So don't necessarily be scared by projects that you see that might be require a little bit more work, because if you have the stamina and you're willing to the appetite to take on a project like that, you could actually create a really cool space in your community in partnership with the community itself. And then the last one I would say is the cities own some properties. And sometimes they will actually use certain dollars and funds to go buy some dilapidated properties because they want it to turn, and they know that as is, it's risky. So maybe they go ahead and buy the land and they demolish the building that's there that's full of asbestos and lead paint. So now they're reducing the risk. And sometimes they'll even sell that property to you for like $1. I've seen it in multiple places across the country, to where they give the land to you almost for free in exchange for you building what they need, whether it's housing or whatever it is. So they can work in partnership with you. And that just means staying alert, staying active, talking to your local city leaders, and just seeing how can you help? How can you improve the community you live in?
How are you finding the wind at your back? I stayed in a place in Philadelphia, absolutely amazing townhomes back in the day, 100 years ago. At this, they're like 10, 12-foot ceilings on the bottom floor with the stamped tin, and amazing stonework outside, just gorgeous. And these were abandoned. Okay, this was not a nice part of town back when I went there. But the local government said to the group that I was staying with, if you stay here and you improve this and you're helping the local community, we'll give it to you. And we will waive all the past due taxes that were on this place. Yeah. Okay. So this is just looking, what does the government want? The government wants to revitalize this. The government doesn't have enough people to go down there and do this. You're willing to live in that place. You're willing to keep it safe. Okay. Well, somebody who owned it before you owed more in tax than the thing is worth. They don't want to touch it. So tell you what, we'll give it to you. It is checking the weather. It is finding out what the local government wants to have done, and then you figuring out how to stack it. Okay, we've got some investors who would like this. I've got this as a developer, and they would like to have this part. Me as the project coordinator, I would like this. The local citizens want this. If we can line all that stuff up, you've got a heck of a deal. So that's what we're saying. If you work with what the government wants, whether it's through tax code or through the development or whatever, you can get amazing things done. However, if you decide, whatever, I'm going to do my own thing because this is America. America's for just doing my own thing. What could go wrong, Kristi?
Oh, we've kind of actually touched on a lot of these throughout what we've said. And so I almost think we could just run through and kind of give the examples of if you plow through and you just try and force your project down the community's throat, it's not going to go pretty. You will have different penalties and fines and additional fees that the city's going to have. They'll shut down your project. They might red tag it to where you have to stop all work until you fix the problem. If you piss off your neighbors and they go squawk to the community, guess what? They're going to have extra eyes on your project the entire time, to where you have to do everything exactly right, where there might have been some leeway before. And if you plan on doing multiple deals in a city, look out for the ramifications of that, because they want team partners. They don't want people jamming things down your throat.
Yep.
And then,
I was going to say, if you're an investor, this is where it's super important that you do your homework on the team that's doing this development project. Oh yeah, we're brand new to Nebraska. Never been here before, but yeah, we're going to come in here. We're going to steamroll this sucker town. We're going to maybe not. But if they've been like, yep, we've been here, we've been developing for 15 years, we got a good reputation. Oh, that is a totally different situation. Okay. That stuff matters. So the government can, in fact, I've had a stop work order put on my, on a new build. You can't blow that away. Also, you could just miss good opportunities, right? If you're not paying attention, you're not asking questions, be curious about that. Okay. Talk about the idea, like, you know what, let's just do it first and ask forgiveness later. That's the way business rolls. Like, move fast and break things. As yes, no, local governments, inspections, permits.
Take very calculated risks when you're doing that. when like we mentioned earlier, I've had so many people go buy the building or buy the property and then get really mad and do no research and get really mad when the city says you can't do what you want to do because you didn't
Yep.
do the due diligence first.
Yep.
A lot of times people will, after the hurricanes, people get really mad that the government has, when FEMA gets involved and comes overarching with their regulations on top of the city, they're like, look, my house is flooded. I have to rip it out. I need to build it back because I have nowhere else to live. And so people charge forward. And then depending on where it's at, sometimes they can force you to completely undo all the work that you just did
Yeah.
when you're already in a bad state of mind and framework and just trying to get life back to normal. So I would say, and I'm a business owner, I'm a risk taker, but at the same time, make sure you understand the penalty, the possible downside. And if it's small enough and you're willing to take that risk, great. But maybe avoid the big ones that can completely derail your project, cost you tons of time and money. And so just make sure you really make it worth it if you're going to do that.
Don't think it can't happen. Okay. Anywhere from municipalities as small as an HOA through your local town, through your county, up to your state. Do not think you could blow that away or blow that off. Tennessee, the state had regulations, safety regulations for years and years and years on short-term rentals. They never enforced it. Didn't really want to, overall didn't care. But guess what? A local county said, it's time, we need to kick this in. And they got a special provision from the state to enforce, for the county to enforce state law, which hadn't been enforced up to that point. All of a sudden, occupancy was capped at 12. It used to be kind of like, hey, whatever you could sleep, go for it. And then the local community said, yeah, we're going to cap it at 12. And people like me are like, what the heck? I bought this big house and I could sleep 16. I could do whatever. And they realized, yeah, this has been a state law all along, which I'm just going to throw this out there really quick. You can get bad advice. This is why we're telling you, and we're not joking here when we say, we are not advising you on taxes. We're not advising you on zoning. We're not giving you advice because, and that's a legal thing, okay, is that if you took advice from someone, you could say, they gave me advice that was bad and I got hurt and now they're liable. We're not liable. Guess what? Real estate agents are not liable for that either. Yeah, they can tell you, oh, don't worry about that. That's just like, they're not going to enforce that. And guess what? If they do enforce that, you can't go back and make that real estate agent buy your property back. Right? I've seen this also in Kentucky, vacation rentals. Don't worry about it. Just buy the place. And then it's easy. You just go get a permit and then ta-da, you're done. I've seen posts of people who bought very, very many zeros property with the assurance from their real estate agent that don't worry, it's easy to get a permit. And the neighbor showed up at the local hearing and said, no, we don't want this. And at the local hearing, the gavel came down. They said, no, you don't get a permit. So now they've bought a house that functions only as a vacation rental based on the price they paid for it, and they can't use it for that. Okay, you can't count on, we talked about inspectors. You can't count on inspectors doing your job for you either. In Tennessee, I had a city building inspector who was basically, I don't know what happened, okay? But basically what happened is the project started, we had surveys done, and the next thing you know, I had a 3-story property on a foundation that had not been properly mitigated for runoff. We had foundation footer exposure issues. We had a stop work order put on the thing. I called the city inspector and said, hey, what's going on here? And he says, what are you talking about? I said, the house on such and such address. He goes, what house? I said, the one that's 3 stories high with a roof and windows and stairs. He said, oh, I didn't even know they started that. This builder had not even been to the work site. I said the inspector had not even been to the work site. These builders had built a 3-story house on an elevated foundation that was not according to engineer plans, and the city inspector had never even gone out to see, didn't even know it existed, hadn't even gone out there. So if you're counting on a government inspector or standards to save your day, sorry, you're mistaken. Okay, Tennessee, the board, the state licenses contractors, total joke. Okay, the guy that we had as a contractor had 7 lawsuits against him at the time we quit. And the state licensing board came back and said, yeah, so what? We'll just send him a letter. 7 lawsuits against this guy, stop work orders. And to them in the state of Tennessee, their licensing for builders, they're like, not a big deal. So if you think that somebody shows up with a license and says, I got approval from the government, caveat emptor, okay, you have to do your own research.
Trust but verify, and nobody cares about your project as much as you do. So you can rely on other teams and put people in place, but ultimately that extreme ownership, that comes on you to make sure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted and to ask all the questions.
Yep. And same advice that you'd get from when it comes to dealing with a contractor or anyone else is that you're liable for this thing, right? And so you have got to do your homework. And the good news is, this is the really good news when it comes to working with the government, is virtually everything they do that is legal has to be public forum, okay? So you have a way to look this up. There are codes you can look at. There are people you can ask, say, what does this mean? And you can get answers to these things. So that is a unique advantage that you have in dealing with this, is that the rules of the game have to be published and they have to be accessible. And when people talk about changing the rules of the game, all of that official work is supposed to be done in a public forum with public records, and you can go back and check this stuff out. If you don't do that, that's on you, okay? That is on you, because the rules are all there. You can know the rules. You can look into this stuff. But basically, when it comes down to working with the government, there are rules of how the game gets played, and you can know them, use them to your advantage, or you can ignore them and call it unfair when somebody else does pay attention to this and does take advantage of the opportunities that your partner, the government, gives to you.
So true. Just a reminder, the government is the only partner that you don't get to choose, and they're involved in every project that you have. So you might as well, instead of having that pain and frustration and the friction, just go talk to them, get to know them, understand the rules of the game you're playing, understand where maybe the rules could change, and just embrace the fact that they are going to be part of every deal you do for the foreseeable future.
That is the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing right there. I want to stress this again. Seriously, this isn't advice for you, because we don't know what municipality you're in. We don't know what kind of zoning codes are going on. We don't know what kind of changes are happening in your state. That's on you, right? This isn't legal advice. It's not zoning advice. It's not accounting advice. It's not engineering advice. We're just telling you that you need to look at the government as a partner and use it to your advantage, or be warned and say sometimes, hey, this is pretty clear. The writing is on the wall. This is not a good risk and I don't want to take it. That's okay too. Better for you to do that sooner than later. We hope you join us again on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we want to bring you the good, bad, and truth about real estate investing, and also a little bit of entertainment. Thanks for joining us.